Well, what if God were to command us to torture children for fun or something like that? It makes morality appear to be arbitrary and capricious.
So anyway, you've done a nice job in painting the picture of the Euthyphro dilemma for us. So now tell us, how would you defeat this so-called defeater?
Yeah, the first big observation that I would want to make is look at the difference between Euthyphro's gods and ours. Okay.
Yeah.
So his were like these fickle, capricious deities subject to all the foibles of human beings. We're talking about in, say, the God of the Bible, a God in whom there's no shadow of turning, a God who is impeccable, a God who is perfectly holy, perfectly good, perfectly loving.
Yes.
And so right off the bat, arbitrariness problems and issues of caprice are not going to carry the same kind of weight. That doesn't solve everything, but it's a good start.
Yeah.
Which by the way, reminds me, you can't simply say, oh, you can get around this by appealing to God's nature and stop there. You have to then say, and God's nature is
right.
Because if God's nature were bad, appealing to God's nature wouldn't help at all. Right.
Yeah. I like to go straight to 1 John 4:8. God is love.
Yes, that's right. God is love. I think that's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And there, as a Christian, I think you can especially start to emphasize, if you wish, in the appropriate context, the way in which the Trinitarian understanding of God makes a fuller sense of God's being essentially loving. There's powerful stuff to do with that, which just reminds me, by the way, that there's a lot of great, I think, cutting edge work to be done in applying the moral argument, not just to theism, but to Christian theism in particular. A lot of exciting work to be done there.
Yeah.
Okay, so having made that distinction, then let's go back to the dilemma. So which horn of the dilemma do I embrace? Now, some people say, well, the two horns of the dilemma are not exhaustive. There's a third option because God is the good. Right? William Lane Craig does this kind of thing. And this way you can sort of slip through the horns of the dilemma. Now that's largely predicated on a theistic Platonic account of God as the good, following someone like Robert Adams. And I do that myself. I tend to think that that's the right analysis, but I also recognize that not every theistic ethicist is a theistic Platonist in that way. There are theistic ethicists who are natural lawyers and other things. So although I myself gravitate toward a theistic Platonic account, I'm going to give you a broader solution. And it's also going to have an advantage of not leaving behind the two horns of the dilemma. I'm actually going to stick with those horns and give you a solution.
Okay.
And here's what I do. I divide between the good and the right. And this is a standard distinction, of course, in ethics, right? So one is the issue of values and the other is the deontic matter of obligations. And basically, I endorse something of a non-voluntarist view with respect to the good and a voluntarist view with respect to the right. Nice. So does God command something because it's good? Sure. Yeah. And then, of course, that raises the question, what's your theory of the good? And ultimately, I think God himself is the good. And I think there are principled reasons to believe that. And we argued at length for that in Good God. So it's not some kind of voluntaristic thing where good is whatever God makes it to be. Instead, you really do start bottom up with your notions of good and you build up and you eventually realize that God's going to be the best candidate for what the ultimate good is. And then maybe other lesser finite goods are good in virtue of, say, relevant resemblance to the ultimate good or something like that. Yeah. So I do that. And then I do, on the other hand, with respect to moral duties, embrace a voluntarist, the voluntarist horn of the dilemma, because I am something of a divine command theorist. That makes perfect sense to me. Built on the foundation of God as the good. Yeah, if God tells me to do something, I think I'm obligated to do it. And does that raise intractable arbitrariness concerns? Well, no, because God is perfectly loving. And so there's no way in which he's going to tell me to torture children for fun or something like that. So contrary to what many say, I think that God actually really well explains certain necessary moral truths because they're rooted in his unchanging character, rather than that dependence relation vitiating the very category or the possibility of necessary moral truths, the wrongness of child torture for fun among them.